making that transition. Going through a period of time where it just feels fine.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm a lot more grateful for the time that I get to spend with my family, especially my son. I was incarcerated, unfortunately, for about almost 5 years, and just trying to acclimate back into society has been a difficult thing. But you're right; the relationships are completely different. I appreciate everything a lot more now. But that's all I got. Thanks.
Well, that's a big transition in and of itself, having been incarcerated and going back out into the world. I mean, that's one of the things we don't realize about that part of our society is that, it's a pretty difficult task, and it's probably a good analogy of what it's like to get sober and to be out without being, bound by the chain of addiction.
What do you mean? What's the analogy?
It's a real adjustment. When you're caged for 5 years and then you go back out in the world and, you're living a completely different life. And that's kind of what it's like when you're in an addiction and then you stop and you kind of open your eyes and suddenly you're feeling everything that you were numb to before. I mean, it's a big change.
Yeah, Patrick has it even worse. It's like coming out after being incarcerated. Not only is it readjusting to society after 5 years of not being in it, but then also having to readjust to society sober after not being in it for 5 years.
Double whammy.
Yeah. So there's probably shame and guilt and uncertainty anyway. How's that going for you, Patrick?
It comes and goes. I try not to get sucked into the shame and the guilt because I know that pushes me back into seclusion, and then I know that's kind of my trigger. So, I know when I start to seclude myself that I need to talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. Before I would just go into my room, and the next thing I know, I'm going out to buy a bottle of whiskey. But, I understand now that, if I start to not talk too much, that I need to go talk to my sponsor, or go talk to my therapist or a good friend of mine that, that will listen to me. So it's getting better. I used to want to, instant gratification. I wanted everything. Hey, I'm sober now, so I should be happy now. But it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. But, I've been really patient and just kind of trying to, this is really cliche, but take it one day at a time. That's been the best thing for me.
That's the only way to do it. That's why it's cliche. But, yeah, well said. And thank you so much for calling in. And I wish you the best of luck, Patrick. And just keep taking the positive mindset. And, people make mistakes. And how we learn from them and make opportunities as learning opportunities is the best. But
thank you. You guys have a good day.
Bye. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
And it's time for our first break, Tom. So I'm going to take our break, and we'll be back with Moments of Clarity in just a moment. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner. We welcome your input at 866-826-1340. Tiffany will be right back after this.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Are you looking to expand your knowledge in the mental health field and earn CEU credits at the same time? DID Discovering Hope is having their annual Creating Resilience Conference on November 15th and 16th, and it's open to all trauma survivors and therapists. 2 days of educational workshops will be led by internationally respected experts, including keynote speaker Dr. Colin A. Ross. For mental health professionals, 11 hours of CEUs are available. For more information or to register, visit diddiscoveringhope.org. Once again, that's diddiscoveringhope.org.
Hi, this is Tiffany Warner, your host of Moments of Clarity. Living with a mental health disorder is not easy. If you or someone you know are struggling with this, please know it's so important to seek treatment and I'm here to help. Please visit the website at momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com to view blog posts and resources on this site to help educate and inspire you to take action, because there's no shame in seeking help for mental health. While you're there, please take a few seconds to sign up for my email list. You'll get some extremely valuable educational and entertaining content that can be sent right to your inbox each week. Plus, you'll also get instant and free access to my guide on managing your anxiety. You can also follow me on Twitter at MOC with Tiffany and at Facebook at Tiffany Warner. And once again, the website is momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com. Thank you so much for your support and for listening to your show, because change can only come when we stand together as one.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
We are back to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Warner. To join in the discussion, call 866-826-1340. Now, here's Tiffany Warner.
Hi, welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Moments of Clarity. My name's Tiffany Warner. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about recovery, substance abuse, and mental health. And we were discussing about how it's difficult for some people to start sobriety at such a young age, but it's happening more and more nowadays. And my guest today has been in the substance abuse field. He's in recovery himself, and I would consider him an expert. And he's giving his expertise on how it feels to get into recovery and some tools that we can use, and maybe why people start so young. And welcome back to Moments of Clarity, Tom Gentry.
Thank you.
So Tom, it's fascinating to think of why people are starting earlier nowadays, why people are picking up things so early. And I don't know how it was when you grew up, but when I was in middle school, there wasn't any drugs going around in 6th and 7th grade like there is today. And it's scary. It's scary what we're sending our kids into.
Absolutely. And being the father of a 13-year-old son, it is definitely scary, especially now with the whole vape thing, the edibles, the CBD oil. There are just so many more avenues for getting into trouble than existed when I was a kid. I mean, I started drinking at a really, really young age. It was me. It wasn't like I fell into a crowd of people who all did. I mean, it was me. I had access to it. I took advantage of it. In terms of pot and stuff like that, middle school, it was, there were a few kids, but, it was rare. It really kind of took off by the time I got into high school, but we're still talking about things like pot. Not to imply that that's great or anything like that, but
it's not like Molly and all this other stuff.
Right. You're not going to die. You're not going to have respiratory failure from smoking too much pot. I mean, it's that's what happens when, sometimes, drugs like OxyContin, that's how young people have died using this drug from respiratory failure. So, I mean, they're just, it's so much more socially acceptable to use drugs that are very, very dangerous in this day and age. It's scary. And
all the vaping that's going on, too.
Yeah, and, it's easier to conceal probably than it ever has been. I mean, now you get high on marijuana, it's not like you smell it like it used to be. Not necessarily, maybe sometimes, but there are so many different ways to use it now that didn't exist before. I thank God I'm the age that I am, and I didn't have to go through all that stuff. And I worry for my son. It's a scary world in some ways.
Do you see any of yourself in him that you worry that he might be picking up bad habits early on?
I don't, that's an interesting question. I see a lot of myself in him in a good way. I've met a lot of people over the years, dads who kind of projected their stuff onto their kids Like, oh, I can see this. And what I've really tried to concentrate on as a parent is teaching him emotional literacy, knowing what his feelings are, knowing how to acknowledge them, knowing how to talk about them, knowing who he can trust with that kind of stuff. I always want him to know that he can come to me. I mean, those are the kind of things that I self-medicate as a kid with alcohol. I used it to change the way I feel. And I realized pretty early on in sobriety that, it was about learning how to manage. In a lot of ways, it was about learning how to manage myself emotionally, so that I don't need to change the way that I feel anymore.
Right.
So that's my goal for my son, is to help him learn how to kind of deal with life on all levels, mentally, emotionally, so that he doesn't find himself, because when the day comes when he has a beer or whatever it is, he doesn't experience it the same way that I did. I mean, to me, it became a tool pretty quickly to fix something that hopefully isn't a problem that exists with him in the first place. Does that make sense? We
all pray, right? that our kids aren't like...
Well, you know what? I mean, he's a great kid, and 13's a tough age. He talked to me about some stuff that's going on in his life this morning, and I made sure he knew he could talk to me. I made sure he knew that I care and that I love him and that he's a great kid. I give him all the things that I needed to hear as a kid, or the things that I felt. And that's a big part for me of what I do for a living, and helping people learn how to live clean and sober, healthy, in recovery, is trying to be the person who I needed when I was their age.
I definitely get it. We have to be the people that we weren't there for us when we were younger. Yeah. And that's the best kind of parenting advice we could give to other parents is to supply. There was this meme that was saying something about, it doesn't matter how much stuff we give our kids that we didn't have, it's giving them the tools that we never learned. It's like some people like to pleasure their kids with gifts or stuff, and that's great, but it's not preparing them for adulthood.
Right. And my son, his mother is a licensed mental health counselor, so he's kind of grown up in this world. He's seen it his whole life. And so I talked to him about, these people who I work with, there are a lot of things that they kind of have in common when you start digging into their histories and hearing about what they went through that got them to this place where they needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when they get to talking about their relationships with their parents, nobody ever really spent time with them.
Yeah.
Maybe, and that's not to say they weren't good parents. I'm not implying that, but maybe dad really worked his tail off, and he, self-made man who became wealthy, but he was working all the time when what his son really needed is dad there.
Right.
And so, I've used all that stuff that I've learned, definitely as a parent, because I think on some level in treating people, we're really reparenting them in a way, and in our own healing, we're kind of reparenting ourselves. At least that's what I've come to believe. But another thing I've seen a lot is a lot of the guys who I work with in early recovery, they have a difficult relationship with the word no. And nobody ever told them that before.
Isn't that interesting?
Or they didn't do it very effectively. Maybe they said no, but they never stood their ground.
The boundaries were never set.
Right. I mean, it's simple boundary stuff, but sometimes it's just a matter of teaching people that the answer isn't always going to be yes, and sometimes that's going to be disappointing, and you have to deal with that. That's life.
And rejection hurts, but and being told no or not getting our way or whatever, it hurts. But
what matters then is, what do we do with that?
Right.
What do we do with that hurt?